The history of Kintwadi story and the origin of the Congo religious movement. Mikhael Massa films. The relationship between Kimpasismo, Kintwadi, Tokoismo, Matwasinismo, Kimbanguismo and Mpadismo. So far, there are several relations between Kintwadism, Tokoism, Matwanismo, Kimbanguismo, Mpadismo and Kimpasismo, in which we decided to divide into areas that even intersect. Therefore, over the years the colonial governments, Portuguese and Belgian, followed it tenaciously, as illustrated by the various reports subversives elaborated by PETA DGS, as we can see. Although we go backwards in what concerns the historical trajectory of each religious movement mentioned above, we will see that these movements have some that are completed, plus each one of the prophets with the passage of time according to the mission he will receive from Yahweh Mpangwa Ngolo was moderating and modified each other according to their calling and charisma. 1. Prophetic relationship. In the prophetic sphere, everyone is a prophet and sent from Yahweh to save the black race, and later the world. Through this charism everyone received the messages and transmitted to their members or followers. Because of the alliance established between peoples, both found peoples previously chosen by God and most of which lacked a guide or enviangudi. 2. Relationship in the dogmatic scope and guidelines. From the dogmatic point of view and the guidelines, the aforementioned movements have a similarity, starting with the Vaticinio, Mpeve and Bukalulu, spiritual or traditional healing. Beyond dogmas and guidelines there is a close link within the scope of constitution of movements. For example, in the prophets Kintwadi Kimbangu, there were the organs of the elders, the so-called 12 Baambuda, princes or priests, those who, Eduardo dos Santos, 1972–150, in his work entitled, Movimentos Prophetic and Magical in Angola, called apostles. In the Tokoism of the prophet Simão Toko, there are Ambuta Kumi Yizol, 12 eldest, the disciples of the prophet, the one who father and anthropologist Gabriele Bortolami, 2018 smiley face, called them 12 elders. Representatives of the temple or tabernacle, as well happened with Matwasinismo of the prophet André Maswa and Simon Mpadi, who also had the advice of the 12 apostles called Bazintumiwa, 12 messengers. In this organ, each member of the 12 apostles had three auxiliaries, Minsadisi, or Asadisi. Eduardo dos Santos, 1971. As can be seen, the dogmatics that these movements have, cause the spirits of each prophet to descend and prophesy in the religion, movement, of each other. 3. Relationship in the prophetic messages. If we are going to analyze we will diligently see that even in the prophetic messages there was a common thread between them and the same objectives towards peoples, which is to save the black race in oppressors and enemies. We are talking about the colonizers, Belgium and Portugal. And how many knots do we truth and freedom? We believe that there were other relationships between the aforementioned religious movements, but we just decided to mention these, which we think relevant depending on the field survey carried out. We are not going to confuse the assumptions of the relationship established between movements and the meaning of the denomination of each movement, as well as the mission of each prophet on earth. There is a disparity. 1.7. The symbolism of the Kintwadi religious movement. The symbology of the Kintwadi religious movement is reflected in the star that is the center of the prophet Simão Kimbangu's ideology of prophetic action, the result of the spiritual conditions and prophecies of Kimpa, Ensimba Vida preferred on deathbed, as we can read in Joaquim Quilombo, 2016, and Eduardo dos Santos, 1972. The Kintwadist symbology, which we are discussing here sociologically, anthropologically and historically speaking, it is nothing more than a new debate despite being a symbol that has come to identify all religious movements founded by the prophets of the Congo region since Prophet Francisco Cazola, 1632, Ne Mupape, 1606–1609, Ne Mabwaka Mpaka Banwenga Filippo Mbumba, 1606–1701, and Dona Apollonia Mafuta, Kimpa Vida, 1686–1706, Simão Kimbangu, André Grenard Maswa, Simon Mpadi and Simão Toko, although each prophet had adapted the star upon the call, mission and charisma they received from Yahweh, God. This time, the ancient symbol of Kintwadi was the star of 5 vertices, the main symbol that identified the Kintwadistas. The Kintwadista iconography clearly shows, as we have mentioned, that the star was represented in 3 circles, thus forming in principle 5 vertices, points, which were linked to the events of life, associating with the sun to give meaning to the system solar in order to illuminate the world. Mbiavanga Rosado, 2018, and André Vieira, 1957, already for Ana de Oliveira, 1994 smiley face. In Kimbanguismo, the 5 vertices of the star symbolize Prophet Simon Kimbangu, Maria Mwilu and the 3 children, whereas the star as a whole symbolizes light. Still in the religious field, Kintwadi, like Simão Kimbangu, 1921, he reacts in his speech, preferred in Mbanza Nsanda, Angola, and Silvino Marcus, 1965 smiley face. As a symbol, the star can mean the freedom and self-determination of nations. Therefore, in the lexicon of the Kintwadistas, as Kimbanguistas and every religious movement or ancestral religion Congo and Zombo, the star has 4 meanings, based on the sociological and anthropological analyses of the ideology of Simon Kimbangu or the prophets Congo and Zombo. A. The star as a Kintwadist symbol. The star that in Kikongo known as Nitamba, was the main symbol of Kintwadi, representing the divine royalty and the people elected by Nzambi to Mpangu Ngolo. The combination of the star and the sun creates a relationship between progression and growth. Here, it is understood that the projection of both generates light or clarity. 2 Peter, 1:19, and Revelation, 22:16. Still in the Kintwadist ideology, besides the star being the main element in the identification of the prophet Kimbangu, it can also be attributed the meaning of the star that guide, directs, and guides the way of salvation to those who are lost. André Vieira, 1957 smiley face. B. The star as a religious political symbol. At first, the 5 vertices, points or corners, of the star was linked to the events of life, associating with the sun to give meaning to the solar system, later came to represent the first most sovereign powerful powers of Mbanza Congo and was later interpreted as the symbol of the alliance between Congo and the land. Already in Kimbanguism it came to mean the throne of the prophet Kimbangu. Ana Oliveira, 1994. C. The star as a spiritual symbol. The star symbolizes the birth of the priest Ensaku, considered soul of the world. Rosado, 2018. D. The star as the flag. The star is the maximum expression of alliance or pact that the Kintwadistas entered into with Yahweh wa Mpangwa Ngolo, with the prophet Simon Kimbangu, from Mbanza Nakumba, shortly after the death of the prophetess Kimpa Vita in the Mbanza Congo. The chronology of suffering of the prophets Congo and Zombo, as well as their peoples, followers, provide a rich relic for the analysis of African theology, what anthropologist Rui Blaines, 2018 smiley face, and anthropologist Gabriele Bortolami, 2018 smiley face, called Legacies, Charisma and Memory of the Prophets, where memory reminds us the more the charisma becomes the driving force of this story, as father and anthropologist Gabriele Bortolami, idem, Colmed, idem. The various sources of the Kintwadi religious movement. The Kintwadi religion or religious movement has several sources. According to our research, these sources are and were where prophetess and prophets received messages from Nzambi to Mpangu Ngolo, the main source we found and which we think is greater. These are the orientations and teachings from Nzambi to Mpangu Ngolo, characterized by themselves as the best source of Kintwadi religious movement, in particular and generally the religion ancestor Congo, as well as all channels, where the matter or teachings that is transmitted to followers. In this case, we chose 4 historical sources existing in the Kintwadi movement, that is, in what concerns the material and work that the Kintwadistas review starting from its origin until Mbanza Congo. 1. Kaluka. 2. Spiritual reports from the ancestors, Akulu. 3. Oral sources, and 4. Documentary sources, as you can see in their definitions. A. Kaluka. The word Kaluka means teaching. The expression comes from Kikongo, language in which the aforementioned message or book, that is Book of Revelations. It is justified, that it is not just a book, but a compilation of divine messages from Nzambi to Mpangu Ngolo through their envoys, prophetess, prophet and Akulu ancestors. We can also define it as sets of divine or sacred messages written by the prophets and messengers under the inspiration of Nzambi to Mpangu with the aim of improving the faith of those who see themselves in it. The Kintwadi doctrine in general and Bundu Dya Congo, in particular, is based on the teachings of Nzambi to Mpangu that sits on the sacred book Kaluka and Sacred Remembrance. B. Spiritual reports of the ancestors, Akulu. The sources of this gender in the ancestral Congo religion or religious movement Kintwadi come from the messages of the prophets, ancestors, Akulu, and exhortations of pastors as figures authorized by Nzambi Tulendo and more, left by the Holy Spirit that dwelt in the body of church members with the gift of prophecy. In effect, to make public the scribes took notes, thus ending the proffering of the scribes, they cleared it and sent it to the 12 Ba-Mbuta princes, shepherd of the movement, who watched the maximum figure for due examination. The same, if approved, was later disclosed on the form of pastoral exhortations in services and beyond. We are pleased to say that it is through these spiritual reports from ancestors, where the type of drug, medicine traditional, in which the patient would fulfill through his illness. C. Oral sources. It is a set of information that occurs in a social environment as well as in the church, or in the life of any individual. For example, it is through this channel or medium that today we have data on this religious movement or enough material to be published through literature. D. Documentary sources. So far, it is important to emphasize that all collections, documents, of the various events that occurred in the trajectory of the religious movement Congo and Zombo and beyond, since the time of the prophetess Kimpa Nsimba Vita, Kimbangu, Andre Maswa, Andre Mpadi and Simao Toko, like so many others, priests and prophets are located in different countries and governments, especially those that have been directly involved in the struggle to annihilate African prophets. Among so many files, we mention the following. I. Belgium Archive, Brussels. In this archive, there are many data linked to the ancestral Congo religion, or religious movement Congo and Zombo, but it is about reserved information despite making it available to the some public. E. Torre do Tombo Archive, Portugal. Many collections about the religious movement Congo and Zombo, as well as the figures of the prophets, can be found in this file. We had the opportunity to consult it in the scope of elaboration of this work. E. Historical Archive of Overseas, Portugal. A resemblance to the Torre do Tombo Archive. Archive Overseas has several collections, and that was useful to us in research to prepare this work. IV. Torvuren File, Belgium. It is another file with various collections about Nkimpa Vita and their religious movement, Kimpasi, or Kimpavitismo, Kintwadi, Simao Kimbangu and many other prophets in the case of Simao Toko, and many of these files are being our possession. V. Archives of the Government of the People's Republic of Angola. Above all, in colonial prison services and people, individuals such as Sobas, Sobetas, local administrators and some pastors and leaders of religious movements Congo and Zombo have many collections relatively to the case of Kintwadi and so many other movements religious. V. Private archives. The church or religious movement, Bundu Dya Congo Dya Bandwenga, in the person of the pastor Mbiavanga Risado, has a vast collection about the Congo and Zombo church. We thank you in advance for kindness that you had to provide us with your copies. On the other hand, it is also possible to find other important documents already recorded in records and archives preserved since 1742 to 1975, as well as the documents of the ancient kingdoms and Sobas Zombo and Congo, systematized in literary works, magazines and newspapers. So far, based on the ideology of anthropologist Rui Blaines, 2018, it is necessary that the ancestral Congo religion, aka Bundu Dya Congo, sees efforts and means so that it can build a museum, that is, documentation center to collect the collection that the similarity that is being made in Nakumba by the Kimbanguistas is spread throughout the world so that they can preserve in our own soil the collection of African prophets. This book about the history and the secrets of the Congo Kintwadi will be published very soon on Amazon. It will be for a while for free, do not miss it. PLS support and pray for me, Mikhael Massa. Let us change the world will be full of wisdom. Do not reject it. It's for free and for everyone available. Everyone that hate us will be blessed too. If you are preaching the same thing like me, why should you be my enemy? The Munda is bigger than that, and everyone will see. No fiction but live. Satan's head will be cut off if not in this world then in the other. I am Massa and I have a lot to share. If Tata Nzambi allows support the ministry, try to become a part of it, knock and the door will be open for you. Ingeta read Psalms 20 and Psalms 1. One love.